Okay, so welcome back to my channel. So I'm just going to jump right into my recap of Marry My Husband, Season 1, Episode 5. So this episode goes more in depth, discussing the relationship between Mr. Hugh and Ji-won, which actually goes back many years. So it starts in 2005. They're like late teens, early 20s, they're college age. And so they're out celebrating. Mr. Hugh was with his friends, and I think they're celebrating him getting into university. And so they just having a good time. Bunch of bachelors, the young, just want to have a good time. And so they bump into Ji-won, or should I say, she almost bumps into them because she is so intoxicated, she can barely stand. And so, they notice her, but then they kind of, try to keep their distance and they want to keep the party going. So as Mr. Hugh runs to he's trying to catch up with his friends, he overhears two guys standing on the side. They notice Ji-won. They notice that she is basically an easy mark because she's not in any condition to defend herself. And so they're even talking about possibly doing something to her. And so he couldn't, just walk away. So he approached her and he was asking her questions about, are you here alone? Where are your friends? Basically what's going on. And, she basically said that she is, basically she's alone. And it's quite sad. She said that, her dad passed away not too long ago. And she broke up with her boyfriend. And then she said, for some reason, people don't really like me. And so they find their way, in the park. They're sitting next to a lake and, she still wants to drink. So I don't know at this point where, she realized that she had a problem, because you remember the previous episode when she was talking to Hui-yeon, she talked about how she used to, she stopped drinking for a while. And then she started back drinking when she got into the relationship with Min-won. So I'm assuming this is one of the darker periods in her life where she could possibly have a drinking problem. And so all she wanted to do, she wanted to drink. And he's basically telling her, why, that if you want to do that, you should drink at home. And of course she was like, I don't have anyone, I'm already alone. So why do I have to drink alone too? And so then she was like, well, I do have this friend that I can never reach, in my, times of need. And, all of a sudden my boyfriend is, too busy to respond to me. And, she insinuates that she knows that something is going on between her best friend and her man, but that she pretends not to notice. And then, she started talking about Sumi, about how pretty she is, how this, that, and the third, and how, she doesn't feel like, she adds up, she doesn't feel adequate, when she's in her presence. And Miss Hugh was basically saying, well, if she makes you feel so bad, whether you feel she's a good person or not, then why do you, continue to associate with her? And so they talked for a bit, and they ended up falling asleep by the water. And, when he woke up the next morning, she was gone. So the next day, he's sparring with one of his friends, and as he was leaving, he heard someone talking, and as he turned the corner, it was Ji-won, and she was talking to this stray cat that she has befriended, and she, feeds. And so he realized that, oh, okay, well, we actually attend the same school. And so he just, he started feeding the cat and, making sure the cat was good. And, they had a snowstorm come through, and he actually went as far as to build the cat a little house to, to try to keep the cat warm. And so she came back, to feed the cat, and then she noticed the house. She was kind of confused, like, well, I wonder who did that. And so one day he was leaving class and he saw the cat dart out in the road, and he ran out to save the cat, and he was hit by a car and killed. So then we fast forward to 2011, where he is at the company, established company, and he's now being introduced to Ji-won, and she's a new employee. Now, obviously, he knows who she is because this is his second go round. But obviously she doesn't know who he is. And the next scene, he could see her kind of hugged up with Min-won. I don't know if this was the start of their relationship or where they were at this point. But he could see them, and all he could think of was, okay, another lost opportunity. Now, it doesn't say what happened to him that go round. But then, he wakes up, and it's 2013. So the next day, Mr. Hugh, he shows up to work and he got a whole new tube, a whole new haircut, and a whole new look. In the previous episode, he had made commentary on her new look, and and how how her personality is different. She's just different, right? And so she suggested that maybe you should get a new suit. Maybe a new look would benefit you. And so he came in strutting in, and all the people was looking, especially the women's. And he approached her, and all he said was, "I do feel better," basically saying you were right. And so she kind of smiled, and he went on into his office. But of course, Minwon was like, "Okay, well, what is this about?" So of course, he pulls her out because they just need to have another conversation. And he's saying that I knew that he was interested in you and da 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 da. So he just going on and on about you can't trust guys and I'm the only guy that you could trust. All this nonsense. So Miss Yang comes in and pulls her away because they have a meeting to go to. So as Miss Yang and Hui-yeon and Ji-won are walking down the hall, Sumi cuts the corner, and she's actually, walking towards Minwon, and he basically just turns the other way and runs in the opposite direction. So, So Ji-won, Hui-yeon, and Miss Yang, they're sitting in the conference room, and they're talking about the meal kit proposal, the project. And of course, everything stops when Sumi walks in, and she comes plopping on the chair, and she's like talking. They were like reminiscing about some story, and she's trying to connect with Ji-won, talking about, "Do you remember when we used to do this, that, and the third, and the beach, and something other?" And of course, Ji-won just really wasn't having it. And so then she turns to Sumi, says, "Well, you guys, you take care of Ji-won. She's really high maintenance," but she's saying it kind of casual, and the whole time he was kind of looking, just cutting her eyes at her like she can't stand her. And then, of course, she goes on to say, when she went off to school, I was sad when she went off to school, but, because she didn't have any friends, and, I would travel, 2-3 times a week, and I'm just trying to make her out to be this pitiful person, and how she was basically her savior, her only friend who did for her. And of course, he is the only one that knows who she really is. So Miss Wang is like, "Oh, you're a really good friend. It's hard to find good friends," and you can just see the look on their face. So this was all orchestrated, right? Because no sooner than she made that comment, Mr. Kim walks in and was like, basically, "Y'all are supposed to be in here discussing this. Y'all wasting time. Da 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 da." And then he looks at Ji-won and basically saying, I couldn't find a parking space. You need to move my car," like in his nasty way. So he ended up giving her these keys. She goes to and she goes up to move his car. And as she's coming down, she said, and right about now, she's thinking to herself, right about now, these doors are going to open and Sumi is going to be standing there. And sure enough, Sumi was standing there and was basically, of course, wanting her to be all, feel away so that she can console her and be the good friend. And of course, she didn't give her that. But then as she's walking, they're walking, she, asked her about the meal kit project again, and how she, though she can't submit it, she wanted to know if she could help out on it. And of course, Ji-won was like, "You know what? I'll think about it." So as Ji-won was walking away, she basically grabbed her wrist and basically spun her around and said, I know you're not still angry at me, are you?" And then she, said something about, "Well, we need to talk about this because you're really starting to hurt my feelings." And again, like clockwork, Mr. Kim and his nonsense, he calls Ji-won into the conference room to talk to her about this project. And of course, he rails her like, "Well, I haven't received your edits or, the updated proposal or your team." And she, apologized for not having it in. And he basically said that he's going to, she named Hui-yeon and Miss Yang, and he basically said that they want to go in a different direction or something to the fact that he added Sumi and some other person to the project. So of course she was feeling away. And then all of a sudden, since your project, overlaps with a project that I was working on. I didn't say it at the time, but now, because your project is overlapping with a project that I'm working on, basically saying that's why he's adding Sumi to the project. And that if he wants to, he could take her off the project. Talking about he could remove Ji-won from the project. So she left that meeting feeling obviously some kind of way. Mr. Hugh approaches her and asks her if he could take her out for dinner. And she basically said that she couldn't go because she had already had, if it's work related, that she, would be there. But if it's personal, then she would not be able to do it because she already has plans. And so her plans was later that evening is when she actually met up with Yoon-ho to talk about this letter that he received. And so he had the letter. He gave her the letter. And she basically said, I did not write this letter. It's my handwriting, but I didn't write it. And that's when she realized that Sumi can mimic her handwriting. And so as she was leaving, she asked him about the reunion. And he talked about, oh, well, your boy, and how he found out about it. And she was like, oh, your boyfriend. She was like, my boyfriend. And he was describing Mr. Yu and said, basically, he told me about it, told me about the reunion. And so, of course, now she's confused. Like, why would first of all, how did he even know you? And why would he, go through the process of inviting you to the reunion? So at this point, Min-won has been trying to call her. She's not returning his call. He ends up calling Sumi. And of course, she had to put 20 on 10. Oh, well, she looks very pretty today. So I thought that you guys are going on a date. He was asking her, basically if she had seen her, heard from her or something to that effect. And then she was like, well, no, basically she's been different lately and you need to keep an eye on her because, her mom found her soulmate after she had, Ji-won, basically saying that, Ji-won's mother was a cheater. So, like mother, like daughter, basically. She's basically putting these ideas in his head because, she knows that he's unstable and irrational and immature. And so she wants to elicit a reaction out of him in the form of him blowing up on Ji-won. So they get off the phone. Ji-won is now walking to her apartment and she can hear somebody walking behind her. So, of course, it's freaking her out. Eventually, it's to the point where she's now running, trying to get to her apartment. And he jumps out of nowhere, scares the crap out of her, and basically admits to doing it on purpose. And, of course, she's asking, why would you do that? And he's like questioning her. Well, are you wearing perfume? And what is this lipstick? And you got blush on your face. Like, he's like inspecting her. And then he starts questioning her about who she was with. And, he didn't like the response, and he ends up saying under his breath, basically, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And of course, she was like, what did you say? And he was like, what? I didn't say anything. And that's when she realized that he had, had a conversation with, Sumi. And so things escalated to the point where he grabbed her wrist and he wouldn't let it go. And luckily, Mr. Hughes shows up. And he went on and did a cute little hip toss or whatever, toss him onto the ground. And then the flashback started playing in his mind of her death. And so he got really angry. And basically, it got to the point where Ji-won had to do all she could to pull him off of Min-won because he was going to kill him. And so he lets him go. He runs off. And so now she's trying to figure out, like, what are you doing here? And he's talking about, oh, I had business in the area. And of course, she didn't believe him. And then he eventually said that basically that you didn't answer your phone. So he was worried about her. And then she felt like it was kind of out of place for him to be worried about her, especially since she felt like he had a girlfriend. Now, they talked for a bit. And then she was like, basically she despised cheaters. And, the fact that, I like Hui-yeon, I think she's really sweet. And the idea that you would cheat on her with me, I'm just not here for it. And of course he was confused. And the reason she got that idea because that idea was because in episode 4, she saw them, she heard Hui-yeon before she saw her. They were leaving this expensive store and Hui-yeon was going on, she was ecstatic that he had bought her this gift, this thing or something that she always wanted. But he ended up calling Hui-yeon, and based on the conversation they had, she was able to figure out that they're actually brother and sister. She's actually his stepsister from his father's second marriage. And so after that, of course, she felt embarrassed and she's like, oh my God, I am so sorry. She just kind of had to try to laugh it off, right? And so they end up walking to her apartment. And now keep in mind, before they walk to the apartment, the whole time, well, most of this whole interaction, Sumi is somewhere lurking, watching this, because what she wanted to see was Minwon blow up on Ji-won, but of course Mr. Hugh intervened and that didn't happen. But now she sees Mr. Hugh and Ji-won having this little intimate conversation, and she's like, okay, well, what is that about? So he eventually walks Ji-won to the door of her apartment building, and it looks as though he's going to go in for a hug, but he actually passes out. And so that's how this episode ends. So this is his third go round and his third, interaction with Ji-won. Like, the fates keep bringing them together for one reason or another. So that is it for this episode, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.